right? 1.8, almost 2, so 10 to the 21st power. I was learning that just the other day, what 21 zeros look like. So I think it's just an enormous mind-boggling amount of data that real people in real organizations are struggling to manage and make usable, consumable, and then storable. So there's the management of the data itself, and then secondarily, all of the systems that you have to put in place to manage that. Some of the decisions that arise are how much of that infrastructure do you want to spend your own IT dollars on and IT resources on versus do you want to move into that cloud area or external managed service area where you're looking at systems management. So there's a lot of choices to be made in that second trend. And then the third area around security, I think, is really driven by the first two. Just by the amount of security breaches and attacks that go on. They make the headlines day to day, so I think, again, we're all familiar with those. So I think from a reseller standpoint, those are really the three key areas where you can make and we're looking at this as well, making a real expertise around how to solve the problems that are related to those trends. Because again, from the customer standpoint, right, the business standpoint, they're going to be looking for someone that can help them architect a solution to their problems within those trends. And that's going to require a lot of expertise because these are quite complex situations that they're facing.
I have to admit to being completely intimidated when asked to predict the future when it comes to IT. And I'm sure that most of you here probably benefit from larger amounts of experience of both the IT world and the channel world than I do. So it's pretty tough to get here and try and tell you where I think the future is going. But certainly what I like to do is listen a lot to our customer base and hear what they're saying about where they think the future of IT is going and what trends are unfolding. And I guess the key ones that seem to flow out of all those conversations is not so much that we are always looking for this kind of next revolution, but actually we need to focus a little bit more on getting back to basics. That really the evolution of our market and what we're doing in it has to be much more about how we service our customers, about how we communicate with our customers, and not looking for the next big fling in IT, the next big thing that's going to excite us all. And if you think about service and the service industry, the concepts that come to mind are usually hotels, restaurants. Those are the kinds of places where I go and get great service. No one will ever say, oh yeah, well, the last time I had great service was when I was dealing with my IT company or with an IT company or an IT vendor. So how can we begin to transform that concept so that people think, that's where I go and get great service. That's where I can rely upon getting the best kind of services and the best approach and the best customer relationships is inside of that space. A couple of things that people have made a big fuss to us about and asked us as a business to be focusing on for their future is really mobile devices. They're just appearing everywhere, and it's a huge, huge market that no one really knows how to approach or how to manage. So that's one of the areas we're going to focus a lot of our attention on within the next 12, 24 months. But also with integration, that people are buying systems and people are adopting different kinds of models to get systems, whether it be online systems, SaaS-based, whether it be on-premises systems, and how do you get all these things to talk together and communicate together? It's still the unsolved problem of communication between these. That's really one area we see people wanting more of the things they buy and purchase, especially software systems, obviously, to be able to talk to each other and actually work sensibly together. So that's my predictions for the future.
That's it, thank you. I should stress this is meant to be interactive, so if anyone's got any questions for anybody on the panel, please just wave your hands around and we'll come to you, and we'll come to questions a bit later as well. I can't believe I'm the first one to mention the dreaded cloud, but I have. Are we in danger? I mean, you can't go anywhere without hearing the cloud mentioned now. Are we in danger of actually overhyping it and causing cloud fatigue before it's even taken off?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all agree there is a lot of hype around the cloud, but for me, cloud is not a technical challenge for the industry. Cloud has been around for a long time. We've all probably been around when the ASP model was being promoted, the outsourced models, those are all based on cloud. For me, there's one big technology challenge that we need to adhere to with cloud, and that's to make sure that the cloud infrastructure is based around open and common and supported standards. You know, we cannot have a proprietary design mentality driving the cloud infrastructure. And you know, I'm not going to use brand names, but you cannot have a brand name cloud that can only support its customers with its product offerings. This must be interoperable. And I think my second observation on cloud is, I think the real challenge from cloud is to look at it from an end user's perspective. I think the adoption of cloud will be as much driven, not, as I said, not by technology, but by an end user acceptance of that business model. Large organizations tend to accept working in a cloud, outsourced ASP mentality. I mean, Intel, you know, we run our expenses, we run our payroll in a cloud outsourced approach. And we handle the security and the data exchange very well. As we try to take this into the more mid-market and the SMB market, that I think everyone agrees is where we want to drive solutions. It really has to be sold as a very productive business model, addressing their concerns, as Cassie said, about data security, data exchange, data sharing, and also then from you in the reseller organization, being able to package up those offerings and offer it out to those customers in a very easy to adopt mentality, very much as a service-based utility mentality, not as a technical solution. So I guess that's my view on the cloud.
I agree. I actually think that's definitely a good point around, it's from a customer perspective. I think the cloud is a word that we use to describe this environment because we can't think of a better word to describe it. But it's when they ask, right, if you think about what does, especially small, medium-sized customer, what do they ask for? They don't ask for a cloud. I mean, eventually you probably get into a discussion of, are you talking a private cloud or a public cloud? But what they, I think, come to the table with is some kind of a technology activity that they want, or a business activity that they want. And you know, those are really good examples, I thought, around either expenses or payroll or some of those functions, or it can even be email. Some small companies, especially in the SMB space, are able to come into being today on an unbelievable shoestring budget because they can take advantage of these services that can happen outside. Right, so I think the barriers are coming down because of this. So I think there's a lot of interest in it because of the potential that it unleashes in terms of the access to technology that it can provide small, medium-sized customers. I think that's the more exciting thing. I think then, you know, the hard part that I don't think is all figured out yet is, well, what is the architecture of that place where that activity will happen? And I completely agree with, you know, the point around it being open, right? So, I mean, our mantra is pretty much open, affordable, and capable, and I think that's one area where, you know, Dell and Intel have partnered quite strongly is on the importance of open standards. And I think as operability moves so broad, right, and everything is ubiquitous, everything is mobile, to your point, things have to connect and talk, then that's also going to almost require the openness, because then you can't have all that interconnectivity if you try to put the walls up. So I think the days of focusing on, well, how can I get my wall up, are probably gone. You need to have the best solution for what the needs are of the customers and focus on being best at that, as opposed to how to put almost like a protection around what it is you want to bring to market, right?
What she said.
I know you're a fan of the cloud, right?
I guess it affects everything you do every single day. For our business, certainly everything we have inside of our company is all cloud-based or SaaS. So there's no getting away from it. However, I do kind of feel not only is it overhyped, it's gone beyond that to where people are almost scared of hearing the words like, oh, we're not going to have to have that conversation again, are we? And it's kind of happening so much now that people are trying to figure out how do we change the subject matter. And I had someone ask me the other day, so what's the opposite of a cloud? Is that an earth? And I guess it actually doesn't really make any difference. If somebody's trying to sell me the cloud, I'm always a bit skeptical. It's like someone who was trying to sell the web 10 years ago. It's just another delivery mechanism out there, another way of getting things out to market. And being able to take advantage of it, make use of it, is all about having the right applications, the right systems out that people actually want to adopt that are living in the cloud. So I guess it's really down to vendors to be able to produce things and for resellers to be able to leverage those back out into their customer base. And at the end of the day, they're after either more functionality or lower cost. So if they bring those things, then great, that's fantastic, everyone's going to adopt it. And it's really about that end result and not so much the means by which we get to it.
You mentioned earlier services. There's a lot of talk. There's been a lot of talk about services and SaaS in the market as well. A lot of resellers are struggling maybe to make that transition from being, say, a traditional product reseller into that services market. What help and advice is there out there for them? Ray, if I could go with you again.
I think there's a lot. I mean, being here is the first step at this kind of event where you can find out about what's going on in the space, what's going on in the market. Certainly we spend a lot of time trying to help all of our customer base get educated about the concept of services. It's, in fact, the core part of what we do is actually getting VARs, getting resellers, getting IT service providers, and helping them to transform their business to be far more services driven, to be far more proactive. And it's very, very hard because there's a change that has to happen all through the mentality of the business, for all the people involved, and it has to be driven as a real requirement inside of their business. It has to be somebody at the top championing that and wanting to absolutely drive it and make it happen. And it's not one thing, it affects absolutely everything. To go out there and get help for it, I don't think there is a one-stop shop. It's certainly upon the part of us as vendors to make sure that we're supplying wherever we can information about how you can deliver more services and how you can articulate everything you do as services more. We use a couple of resources as a company called True Methods, a guy called Gary Pica who runs that, and he goes out there and talks about how do you sell services, how do you change your pitch so that you articulate things that you sell that would traditionally be products as a service, and how do you explain the value of that as a proposition to your customer base. Robin Robbins is another one, she's a marketeer, and we tend to point our customers towards these external, just because as a vendor, we are not a service provider per se ourselves. We don't necessarily do that. We can't claim to have all the experience at it. So we will generally try and partner up with other people in the space. But there's a lack of them, it has to be said. There isn't that many places to go to really get highly educated about it. Many of our most successful service providers are figuring it out for themselves. And we try and make sure that we get their experiences back into the market space wherever we can for that very reason. But I'm sure, Tom's here, this is the perfect place for us to learn all about it.
What would you say was Dell's take on that?
From what we hear from customers, it's really about expertise. So some of the research that we've done, the customers tell us that they would be willing to even pay a premium where they see there's true expertise. So I think what I would say is take a step back and understand if you're going to get into services, which is quite complex and requires expertise, it's probably good to know, well, what area do you want to be best in, or do you want your staff and your team to be best in? Because it's, I don't think it can be as broadly approached as maybe hardware, right? Classic, I've got a portfolio of things, of stuff. The information about them is probably something I can put on PDF, send it out, it's pretty clear. Do you want, memory upgrades, right? Or